and welcome. I am Gillian Park and I'm a professional artist working mainly in oil paint. I do dabble a lot in mixed media and in pastels and in gouache and kind of anything other than acrylics. Um, so I am here today in my quest to convert all of the artists worldwide to the joy of oil paints. Now, I teach a lot of students, I teach a lot of artists from total beginners right up to seasoned pros who are selling their work. And everyone works in a different way. Everybody uses different mediums, and we all use them in different ways as well. Um, so many people say to me, I would love to work in oils, but I don't like the smell. They take too long to dry. I don't have the patience. They're too expensive. There are so many brick walls that come up when somebody wants to start using oils. So I thought I owe the world this wee freebie that I've put together to bust, if you want to be American, bust the four biggest myths about oil painting, and hopefully convert you to the options, the wonderful world of oils that are out there. Myth number one. Number one, I don't have the patience for oils. So I'm going to give you 3 tips. Actually, I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to use oil painting if you don't have the patience. Now, if anyone knows me, anyone out there knows me that I am very impatient. So I have had to find ways of working with oil paints that allows me to be as impatient as I usually am. Number one, the way to work, alla prima. So you are doing one painting in one sitting. You start at the beginning and you finish that in the same sitting. There is no leaving it to dry like acrylics. You don't paint a layer, leave it to dry, paint a layer, leave it to dry, paint a layer, leave it to dry. You work wet on wet, alla prima in one sitting. There are different ways to do this. So you can go straight into palette knives, you can build up thin to thick, but you paint in one sitting and then you're not getting bored. Number two, I've just mentioned paint from thin to thick. So I teach techniques that you are working really dry onto the canvas, onto the surface, and building up the thickness of the paint and finishing up really thickly. So you can paint thin to thick in one sitting. No boredom there, no patience required. You can, of course, take a deep breath, use an acrylic underpainting. So if I am painting massive 1 meter paintings in oils, it can be very expensive. We'll talk about that later. But I will use acrylic paint to create an underpainting. So I will start my first few layers in acrylic to get the colour on the canvas, and then I can work oils on top, which again negates the needs for patience because you have basically got your underpainting and then you're working on top, so you can finish it really quickly. You just wait for the acrylic to dry and you bang on the oils on top of that. No need to be patient. My last tip for those of little patience, working more than one at a time. So I am a big advocate of creating collections, which is much more beneficial for artists who who are exhibiting, who are approaching galleries. The need to work in collections is massive, but it also helps building your style, um, building your confidence, building your technique by working on more than one painting at a time. A lot of artists I see will work in one painting and they're totally invested in that one painting. So if something goes wrong with the painting, if you're going through a rocky patch with the painting, which, do you know what? If you don't go through a rocky patch with a painting, there's something a wee bit odd. But they can be really put off by hitting a tricky patch. And then they put it to one side and they've nothing else to work on. So they're completely invested in that one painting. So I would advise to work on a few at one time, even two or three. It doesn't have to be a collection of 10. But if you're working in two or three different paintings at a time, you're working in one and then you're moving to another and then you're moving to another. It really, really suits the oil method to do that. So to recap, I don't have the patience. So you work alla prima in one sitting, you work thin to thick, you work with an acrylic underpainting, and you work in more than one painting at one time. And that negates the worry about having no. Number two. Number two, the biggest resistance I hear is that it's too messy. I need too much equipment. I need to set everything in, and then it's all the clear up. It's too messy to clear up. It's too messy to work in. So let me give you 3 tips on how to make oils less messy with less clear up. Number 1, use water mixable oils. Now I have been trialing sea white water mixable oils recently and they are fantastic. They have got all of the qualities, the lovely qualities of traditional oil paint, but can be, we use water to mix, we use water to clean up, brushes can be cleaned in water and there is no smell. So if you're working at home, if you're just setting up on the kitchen table or you've got a wee nook or you are taking it on a holiday for a staycation, then you can use these oils in the middle of family life and no one will complain about the smell. You don't have to worry about the clear up because it's just tap water you need to clear up, to dilute, to wash your brushes. So everything is there, the joy of the oils, but without the mess of the clear up. Another couple of tips, paper palettes. If you're using oil paint, a paper plate does not work. So sometimes with acrylics, you'll use a paper plate, but acrylics are plastic, so they sit on top. Whereas oils, even water mixable oils, have got a high oil content in there. Water mixable oils are just traditional oil paint with a different percentage of oil to water that's within them that allows them to be used with water. So they have the same properties as traditional oil paint. So paper palette pads, really easy and cheap to buy. They might not be the best for the environment. However, if it's just every now and again you're using them, they are really, really handy. Work in the palette, fold it up, pop it in the bin. That's it, done. No cleaning palettes. Next is just use a few brushes. You don't need every brush in the shop. You don't need to go and get a whole set from 0 to 30, a set of brushes. Just use two brushes. You'll be lucky if I use 2 brushes in a whole painting. There are other things to use. Hands. But just really, really look at your materials and ask yourself, do you actually need a set of 5 palette knives and a set of 12 brushes? Keep your tools to a minimum. The less tools and paints basically you use, the easier it will be to paint. Less choice, less indecision, win-win. So an answer to it's too messy. I have my list here just to keep me right. Use water mixable oils. They are they are honestly a game changer, folks. I would recommend Sea White water mixable oils. I'm not paid by them, but they are fantastic. I've tried them before in the past, other types, and they were awful, but Sea White have been fantastic. Use just a few brushes and use things like paper palettes for cleanup. So if you think it's too messy, limited tools, paper palettes, disposable, and water mixable paints. Number three, this kind of ties into the patients, I suppose. Number three is oil paint takes too long to dry. So it's taking too long to dry, therefore you don't have the patience, or it's taking too long to dry because then you can't go and take it to a framer or hang it up. So I have three different ways to solve this problem. The first is surfaces. So oil paint sits on a surface and the paint cures. It doesn't dry, it cures. So therefore the oil content kind of dissipates, if you like. So sitting it on a radiator or using a heat gun doesn't work. So I am going to suggest that the difference that you will notice by using different surfaces. If you're using primed canvas, which is like a stretched canvas or a canvas board, you'll notice that the paint will dry slower on the canvas than what it would on wood, for example. So if you're using, I have got some here. Let me just have a look. Collapse everything around about me. But if you're using something like a plywood cradle board, which are really, really affordable, they're easy to get hands on. Cradle boards, plywood, offcuts, MDF offcuts. If you're working any sort of wood, you can paint oils directly on top of it. You shouldn't be. People will tell you not to do that. Or you can put a layer of gesso. A layer of gesso will allow you to work straight away without the oil sucking right into the board. The reason people say that you can't work directly onto wood is because the oil will soak into the wood and it will change the kind of consistency, but that's what will dry your paint quicker. So you'll be able to work really quickly with this because if you work onto the wood, even if it's got a layer of gesso, it will dry much, much quicker on the wood because the oil is being absorbed into that surface. The purists don't like it, but bugger the purists. So I use these a lot and it allows me to work a lot quicker if I am working in layers. So that's my first tip is change the surface you're working on. And it's not about changing it. So if you know that you're going to be building up a lot of layers, then you might want the canvas. If you're a slower worker, you would want the canvas because you can move the paint about for a bit longer. If you're wanting your painting to dry really quickly for whatever reason, work on the wood. My next is drying mediums. So, for example, liquid and cold wax medium. Um, these are things, if you're a beginner, you don't need to know about. Don't even just switch off, go make yourself tea right now. But if you have been working in oils for some time and you are building up a body of work and you're looking for something that can really speed things up, add a wee bit of a gloss, add a bit of impasto, a bit of texture, then cold wax medium and liquid, and that's at a medium, but loads of them like that, loads of them like liquid. Liquid is the one I use. I also use a beeswax medium by Michael Harding. Um, these dry the paint slightly quicker. Um, Now it does say on the packaging that it's a drying medium. I don't think it dries massively quicker, but it definitely does dry thinner layers more quickly. And with impasto is just thick layers of paint, folks. If you're using cold wax in paint to make them really, really thick in 3D, that could take an age. If you're just using paint, it will take an age to cure, to dry. So adding cold wax into that will reduce the drying time for really thick layers. And finally, this is a good this is a good one. It's a kind of obvious one. And do you know, I used to do this a few years ago when it was very fashionable. It was fashionable to have your paintings framed behind glass. Right now we're going through a bit of a spell that we don't put frame paintings behind glass unless it's watercolour or water-based medium. But if in doubt, if you need to get a painting to an exhibition, if you need to get a painting to a customer, if you need to hang a painting up, then have it framed behind glass. So if your wet painting is wet behind glass, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to go up and smudge it. So you can always have it framed behind glass in an emergency. So let's reiterate, oil paint takes forever to dry. 3 tips: use a different surface. Um, Wood is great for really, really quick drying oils. Use the different drying mediums, have a play with them, have a play with liquid, have a play with beeswax, have a play with cold wax if you like it thick. And lastly, if all else fails and you need to get a wet painting somewhere, have it framed behind glass. Number 4, finally, and this is very anyone who's come to workshops, oil painting workshops, me, quite a few people have loved the experience of oils, but are put off with the expense that they have to invest in the kit because they've already got, shed loads of acrylics, they've got watercolours, they've got inks, they've got pastels, they've got oil pastels, they've got everything. And this other whole set of materials and mediums that they're going to need really puts them off. So I have got some great tips for how to build up your oil painting kit in a really affordable way. Firstly, the water mixable paints. I know I'm banging on about these, but the water mixable paints negates any need for solvents. I also have something that I call a Turps handbag, which is a stainless steel brush cleaner. It negates the need for that kit. You could just use a tub or a jar. So you're missing out the solvents, you're missing out the vessel in which you need to keep the solvents. So we're negating with that if you use water-based paints. Limit the amount of colours that you use. I know it's really I know it's really tricky when you get into an art shop or you go online and you're looking for your paint and you're faced with an array of about 83,000 colours, which are all absolutely gorgeous. I must have that. Oh, I must have that. Start building up with 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds, a warm and a cool in each, and then a couple of earth colours if you like. So I would always have 2 yellows, lemon and cadmium. I would have 2 reds, a cadmium, thug, and a rose or an alizarin crimson, so you can make pinks. I would have 2 blues. Usually I have Prussian blue or phthalo blue, and ultramarine is a must for me. I love ultramarine, but you might change the Prussian blue up for cerulean, which is a more turquoisey blue. And then burnt umber, and I cannot live without yellow ochre. And of course, your titanium white. Be careful when you're buying whites, folks. Don't buy zinc, don't buy mixing. Buy titanium white. It's got the power of white that others don't. They are very much about mixing with your other paints, so you won't get the power of pure white. You can add those later. You can add those later when you want them. But your main kit is 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds, and you will basically be able to mix as many colours as you like. All the greens and purples that you need, all the oranges that you need, all the pinks that you need. So you have got everything at your disposal with these 222. And after that, if you want to treat yourself to a new colour of paint, I am a bit of a sucker for cobalt turquoise light, then you can. But start with the basics and then you've got your bog standard, just your basic palette. Um, One that I love. Oh, let's go to the colours first. Actually, you can choose to use student quality paint. While we're still talking about paints, it's prudent to bring that up. There are two different qualities of paint, artist paint and student quality paint. Artist paint is much higher pigment, so you need less paint, but they come in four different bands of cost depending on what pigments are used. So some tubes can even cost you, even for a tiny wee tube, 30, 40 pounds for a wee tiny tube. Student quality paint, you'll see every tube is the exact same price. So there are more fillers in it and you probably need a bit more paint, but they're absolutely fine, especially if you're using them really thickly. If you paint with a palette knife, if you like thick paint, student quality paint is absolutely fine for you. Don't spend money on artist colours when you don't need to. Starting off with the student quality paint is absolutely perfect. And these are the mainstay. When you see in shops and online, they are the mainstay of colours. And you'll recognise them because every tube is exactly the same price. So limit your colours to 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds, white and earth colours. Use student quality paint. Budget-friendly brushes. The amount of people who spend, oh, what's the best brush to buy? Don't spend money in brushes. I use a big pack of Royal and Langnickel synthetic brushes. I use them for every medium that I work in, every medium, including oils. I dislike bristle brushes. So if you're traditionally an oil painter, they would recommend bristle brushes like what you used to get at school. I don't like them because they're kind of taking the paint back off again. It's okay for scrubbing into the canvas, but I prefer synthetic and softer brushes. So you might want to look for acrylic paint brushes. And you can buy big sets for a tenner. And as long as you're cleaning them, they'll last you quite some time. So don't spend a lot of money in brushes, folks. There are much better tools to apply paint with. Hands, palette knives, scrapers, sponges. Don't invest in brushes. Palettes. So I am an advocate. I have got, in my studio, I have a big trolley, a big butcher's trolley with a glass palette. I use glass palettes. On that trolley, the glass in that trolley is actually a shelf from a three-tier glass TV unit. So a couple of years ago, we were throwing out a TV unit, all glass. And so I dismantled it and I keep the shelves and I use the shelf for mixing on. Also, if you've got fridge shelves, if you have old microwave plates, frames, if you've got an old battered frame that's got a bit of glass in it, make sure you tape the edges to make sure that you're not going to cut yourself or keep it within the frame, but using the recycled materials for glass palettes is the way to go. So let's reiterate, it's too expensive. Limit the amount of colours that you buy. Instead of buying a set, assess whether the set is valuable or not. If there are greens in that set, don't buy it. You're looking for a set with 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds, and your earth colours in white. Use budget-friendly brushes. Use student quality paint and use recycled glass as a palette. And you are going to start with a really affordable small kit that's all you need to get started in oils. Even if I have a couple of online classes which paint in just 3 or 4 colours, even if you just start with 3 or 4 colours, including white, and just build it up every month, treat yourself to another colour and then start building. You will then become so adept at mixing colours and get real cohesive colour palettes within your work. So we don't always need everything. In fact, it's often better not to have everything. So I hope that has transformed your ideas about oil painting. I hope you will be tempted to give it a try. Remember that you don't need patience. It's not too messy, and it doesn't need to be expensive to start. Really, really think about the surfaces you're working on, the amount of kit that you need, and how you work in order to facilitate the oil medium. And I'm sure you will love it as much as I do. I would love to hear if you are going to try it, if you have tried it and you're coming back to it again. But I'd love to hear how you go on using these 4 tips. Actually, 12 tips within 4.